Okay, so welcome everyone. Wonderful to see you again. This is the fourth in our series of 7 talks and the last one for this year between Forrest and Delson. And today's theme is comparing practices, similarities, differences, and hybrid potential. So again, we'll go for an hour, or we'll aim for an hour of Delson and Forrest talking, and then open it up for questions. And the hypothetical 30 minutes, we'll see how many hours we can fit into 30 minutes this time. But it should be interesting. So maybe I'll kick it off. Oh yeah, so it just says here the theme is exploring intersections between the meditative systems. So maybe I'd like to start off and ask each of you, Forrest and Delson, and I know that you're not necessarily limited to these systems. So if you want to broaden it out to like what you teach, that would also be very interesting. But I'll just frame it in terms of what you're perhaps most known for. Forrest, I'll ask you about Kriya Yoga, and then I'll ask Delson about TWIM, but then of course, please address it however you like. So first, over to you, Forrest.
Sure. So I think that the question was, what's the core of Kriya Yoga? If I was to boil it down, right? And
Right.
so
Yeah.
the Kriya is about entering the low idle state, and so that calmness in the body reflects back on the mind. It starts to give us a little bit of clarity, and we want to clean out the chakras, the projections of the brain. So this is a kind of therapy. The Om Japa and the chakras is a kind of therapy. It's all a therapy. Even the samadhi is a therapy, funny enough. And so we're trying to clear out the way and ascend into the upper nervous system. And that's when we begin to first experience what love can be. And maybe we have an experience of that in our lives where we fell in love once upon a time. And we know what love is. We think we know what love is, and yet we're wrapped up in these lower worries and concerns most of the time. And so all of a sudden in the meditation, you start tasting that love every single day. And so now you're entering into this upper nervous system. And finally, we get up into the brain, we begin to expand. And we begin to enter into these immaterial meditations. And so that's what the Kriya is all about, is getting to that point where you can taste the deep brain, where you can taste these states which are flowing through the deep brain. So did Delson have to pop out and pop back in?
Yeah, I'm back. I don't
I'm
know if you guys can see
okay.
me.
There
Yeah.
he is.
Yeah.
So yeah, that kind of wraps up Kriya. I think we could go on forever about Kriya, but that's what it's trying to do in a nutshell. It's trying to enter the low idle state, clean out the way, and then enter the upper nervous system, and finally expand. Leave the body behind and expand.
Beautiful. Thank you. So, and over to you, Delson. Uh, yeah, if you'd like to talk about what you're teaching.
I think he's having a little
Okay.
trouble with. There he is.
Yeah, we got a bit of a delay on the Mumbai Express tonight, and might take a minute
uh,
to come back.
okay, I don't know if this is any better. Uh, yeah. Okay, good. All right. So I'm having some technical difficulties here with my Wi-Fi, so bear with me. So when we talk about TWIM, right? TWIM, TWIM. It stands for Tranquil Wisdom Insight Meditation. And this is a system that was essentially founded by a Buddhist monk named Bhante Vimarahamsi, the late Bhante Vimarahamsi. And he, along with a few other people, were very much interested in meditation and in the practice of Vipassana. And as far as I understand it, Bhante, when he was a layperson, was very much inspired by some great meditators who he met, including people like Deepa Ma and uh, Munindra ji. And both of these meditators came from a Vipassana style background. So Vipassana is essentially the process. If anybody's been in a 10-day retreat, it's basically where you're observing the arising and passing away of feelings, and you're starting to see for yourself and directly experience the impermanence of feeling or any kind of experience for that matter. But Bhante, when he was in Burma and Thailand, he found himself sort of at odds with that particular style of teaching, is he found it to be, they said that he was at the end of it, but he didn't feel any kind of change or personality change, as he called it. And so he had met with another very, very well-renowned meditation teacher and monk named Bhante Punaji. Bhante Punaji is also now passed on, but he has some great videos talking about cessation and different states of meditation and so on. And he suggested to Bhante Maramsi to go back to the Pali Canon, which, according to Theravada tradition, is probably as close as you can get to the words of the Buddha. And so he went in and he started studying. He looked into what is known as the Majjhima Nikaya. It's a very thick book. It's the middle sayings of the Buddha. And he looked at what was known as the Anapanasati. So Anapanasati means mindfulness of breathing. And in there, there's a statement which says, breathing in, he knows he's breathing in. Breathing out, he knows he's breathing out. Breathing in long, he knows he's breathing in long. Breathing out long, he knows he's breathing out long, and so on. And in doing so, one tranquilizes the bodily formations. And that was a big find for him. And so as the story goes, he went into a cave and he tried it for himself with reading the Majjhima Nikaya and using this technique of relaxing the mind and body. And he also had a cave mate who apparently, as the story goes, was a cobra. And he would bring mangoes back and he would feed it to the cobra and he'd say, okay, you have this side and I have my side. I won't bother you and you won't bother me. And so that was the agreement that they had. And so he started learning from the Majjhima Nikaya and the Pali Canon, and he developed a system of essentially tranquilizing or relaxing the mind and body. And what he found was very similar to that. When you relax the body, the mind also becomes relaxed. When you relax the mind, the body becomes calm. And so there is this correlation that happens. And so as it started evolving, he utilized something called drops. Don't resist or push, soften and smile. So whatever is happening in the meditation, don't resist it. Don't push it, just soften or relax and smile. And eventually that evolved into what's known as the 6 R's. And that is to recognize that you're distracted, release your attention from it, relax the mind and body, re-smile or come back to a smile, and then return back to whatever your object is. I reduced that down to 4 R's, which is essentially you recognize, relax, re-smile, and return. Right? So, and repeat whenever necessary in either case. So what the twin practice is a response to the Vipassana school of teaching. And what it's saying is, instead of becoming one-pointed to a point where you cause a lot of tension in the mind and body, your mind becomes more spacious. Your awareness and attention becomes more spacious. And therefore, you're able to catch any hindrances that might arise, distractions that might arise, learn how the mind moves from that to another attention, to another object, to another object, and then being able to gently guide it back using this 6R process. And as a result of which, similarly, it goes through the 4 jhanas, the 4 material states. That is to say, it experiences joy. One experiences joy, one experiences bliss, one experiences tranquility, and then equanimity and calm. And then from there, it goes into spaciousness, infinite consciousness, nothingness, and neither perception or non-perception. Now, Bhante changed the meditation methodology or the object of meditation to the 4 Brahma Viharas. That's loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Because he found that people were able to, better adjust to the meditation, have more joy. Because when you're loving yourself and you're loving others, you're already quite joyful. Whereas with the way that the breath was being taught in the Vipassana schools was very dry and boring and not exactly helpful. So not to be critical on the Vipassana school, I'm just saying that was Bhante's experience with it. And so now what I teach is TWIM, but I've also noticed that Kriya plays a very vital role in relaxing the body and the mind to a very high degree, that it's actually much easier for people to get into these, low idle states and then ultimately into samadhi. So that's what I'll say so far, and we'll see where it leads us.
Great, thank you. This is not on my list of questions, but I have to ask, having been also sort of like spent, at least a decade working on the Mahasi style and the Goenka style Vipassana practices, I've stopped saying that I broke myself on them, but I would say that I liked them more than they liked me. And so I'd like to ask each of you about the role of fun in meditation, because I've experienced so much fun since doing TWIM
wow.
and since doing Kriya. And so I'd like to, maybe we can, whoever wants to jump in and tell me about fun.
Well, you just hit my core right there, because I'm all about fun and joy in meditation. Because Jesus Christ, if you're not doing that, what the hell are you doing? So you gotta have fun. You gotta be interested. And so I have a wonderful, amazing student. And when he met me, and he was already quite deep, and then I started training with him, and he went very, very deep, very fast. And he admitted to me in the beginning, I have a love and hate relationship with Kriya. And I'm like, oh my God, we gotta clean that out. That's gotta go. And so you enter into a lot of these well-meaning systems, and they're very dry, and they're very they're beating you over the head, and you never feel good enough, and you're always striving for this perfection, which is ridiculous. And it's a monastic thing, and so that's all messed up, and it's just on and on and on with all these problems that I've seen a lot of times where I really think that people are trying very, very hard, and they're being extremely strict with themselves because they don't know how meditation actually works. And so when you don't know, you just do everything. We're just going to do everything. We're going to be celibate. We're going to be this. We're going to be that, because we don't know how it actually works inside of ourselves. So we'll just stress out and make sure that we're very, very, very narrow and very, very proper, and that doesn't actually work. You actually have to. I mean, you're always going to be hit and miss with something like that. So I think the fun is essential, and what I'm trying to do is, what I've done is pull apart the Kriya and show you how it's actually working. And you can take those pieces and you can run with them, And even if it's just one piece, if it's just HRV resonance, I mean, you could run with that for your whole life and have a fantastic meditation adventure for your entire life. You could take Hakala and just run with that and have an amazing meditative journey for the rest of your life. And so it's just you got to have fun with it. You got to have interest. Your heart has to be at play, and if you're not, if your heart is not at play, you're not interested. You're not in it. You don't have skin inside of the game. You know, it's this dry, banal kind of thing, and it's just you're just going to wither and die. And so you'll see people get on a meditation journey and then quit, and they get on a meditation journey and then they quit, and it's this back and forth, or you know, or they go. I've seen yogis tell me, "Oh, I'm meditating 6 hours a day," and they're so gun ho, and they're not doing 6 hours because it's wonderful. They're forcing themselves, and I'm like, you're going to burn out. So you know, it's a foregone conclusion, and yeah, so it's so much more natural than the rest of the world thinks it is, and so I'm bearing witness to that naturalness and to that fun and that spontaneity and putting your heart in your game. And Delson just said it perfectly, you know, that we're coming up, this inner smile. I mean, just oh my God, isn't that gorgeous? I'm just gonna smile, I'm gonna relax and let go, and I'm gonna smile because it's all a joke. And one of one of the perceptions I get a lot is that this world that we're in is just a big cosmic joke. And it's kind of like, you know, I can look at the world and it's kind of a screen, and it's almost like I can put my finger through it, you know, and then behind the screen, it's God, and God is just laughing like crazy at me, at the cosmic joke of it all. And so, you know, you get into your upper nervous system, you start tasting some of that, and it's quite real. It's quite real. And so, what Delson said was just beautiful. That's where we're heading. We're heading towards that joy and that fun. And yeah, you just got to have fun with it. We got to be able to laugh at ourselves, laugh at the world because it's crazy. Don't take everything so seriously. And sometimes even your problems, which are serious problems, you know, you can laugh at those too. And now you're entering into fearlessness, which is amazing. So the joy gets so powerful, you can even overcome crazy troubles and lots of suffering and pain. You can even overcome that with this kind of joy. And that's transcendent. So that's really what I think, maybe that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about the joy, is we're talking about this transcendence. We're running past these things. It's not that we're ignoring them. No, we're transcending them. It's a little different.
Beautiful. Yeah, when you talk about the hair on fire practice, I think of them sort of as Top Gun meditators. um, which is, you know, not to say that that's good or bad.
Oh, I've been
But
there. I did all of it. I did all of it.
yeah.
So, you know, I'm the first guilty one. I did all of that. That's how I know it's wrong.
Beautiful, beautiful. Delson, anything to say about fun in meditation?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Forrest. I mean, when I started out my practice, uh, outside of Kriya, outside of Twim, outside of anything else, I was very gung ho about the practice. I started off at the age of 14, and then really in serious earnestness at the age of 16, and it was like, I got my hands on every book there was, every scripture there was, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the Yoga Sutras, the Garinda, Samhita, like really obscure texts, yoga Yagyavalkya, and all of these things. And I like just like tried my best, like really forced myself. And that's the operative word here, forced myself to really kind of like do the breathing practices, the pranayama, the very hard, forceful pranayamas and so on. And I suffered for it. I suffered intensely for it. I think part of that process actually led to me having some kinds of immune issues, which actually led to near-death experience and being in the hospital for months at a time. I was, I'm not the jovial, laughing Buddha that you see now that I was then. I was like this skinny, skeletal frame of a, husk that was just like, just having a bad time of it. And I noticed that like a lot of the so-called great meditators of history, whether you look at someone like Ajahn Mun or Lahiri Mahashaya, not Lahiri Mahashaya, Mahasi Sayadaw, in the Buddhist traditions, I would rarely ever see them smile. They were always sort of like very kind of like stern looking. And maybe it's just because they've never encountered, a photographer and a camera before. Maybe that might be it. Uh, but even the photo of Lahiri Mahashaya, if you see him, he looks like he's in ecstasy. Like he might not be fully smiling, but that famous photo of his, he is definitely in some kind of ecstasy. Um, you see the images of the Buddha, there's a little smile on his face. You see images of Krishna or Shiva or Vishnu. They're all just very relaxed. I mean, Shiva, he's stoned. He's stoned AF. He's just somebody who's just completely like lost it. But, Vishnu and Krishna and all of these guys, you see little smiles on their faces. And it's because they're seeing, they're actually, it's a teaching. It's like whatever happens, you can still smile through it. And I think that's the important lesson here for meditation practice. We've spoken about how meditation is a preparation for death. How many people actually greet death with a smile? Like that Harry Potter. I'm going to paraphrase that quote. He greeted death like an old friend at the end of his life. How many people can actually do that? So this process of meditation should be fun. It should be jovial. It should be happy. It should be bubbly. And like Forrest says, if you're not doing those things, what the hell are you doing? I mean, what are you meditating for? I mean, you're going to be grumpy and forceful and meditate 6 hours, 7 hours a day for a little ounce of joy. Why not start with the joy? Because the joy, by the way, I will say, and I think Forrest might agree with me on this. The joy is just the beginning. The joy is the beginning. It's just the part of like the beginning of the journey, and then what happens is even beyond joy. Joy is transcendent and supramundane, and then there is a different kind of experience that is transcendent of all of that. Ramana Maharishi talked about that as well. He said the bliss is overrated. That's just the beginning of it. After a while, when the mind becomes collected and it becomes calm and it has samadhi, then the real practice begins. So I resonate with a lot of people who come into the practice, whether it's Kriya or TWIM, looking for an ounce of joy. But what I've noticed is they realize that the joy is just part of it. In the 10-day retreat, they're experiencing great amounts of joy in the first 3 days, and then great amounts of calm and clarity. So fun, what does it mean to be having fun? Be like little children. That's what Jesus said as well. Be like little children. Yeah. Right? Look at how the little children are. They have no qualms about things. They're not worried about this or that. They're fully in the present. They're enjoying themselves. They make friends so easily with each other. They forget about each other's mistakes immediately, and they say, "Okay, let's go play." They don't hold on to things. They're just with the flow of life. And somehow, as we got older, as we grew up, we thought that's just childish stuff. We should let that go, and we should be more grumpy and more attached and fixed in our views and so on and so forth. So it's like a hero's journey again. You start off as a little child, you go through that phase of adulthood, and then you come back to your inner child and the essence of who you are. And the essence of who you are is the origin of joy. It's the origin of happiness. It's the origin of bliss. Jesus says, look for the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is inside of you. It's not something up there. It's inside of you. And it's something, and he says that. He says, look for the kingdom of heaven. Everything else will be given to you. So look for the inner happiness. I don't know if I told you guys, but I was telling somebody about this in another group, maybe. The foundation that I work with is called Freedom of Mind. And initially, when we started the foundation, we came up with different names. I wanted to call it Maximum Happiness Foundation. But some of the people were like, I don't know about that. That sounds like we're selling sex and drugs. Maybe we shouldn't do maximum happiness. So I said, how about ultimate happiness? And people were still not satisfied with that. So I said, okay, freedom of mind, because it comes from the word Chaitya Vimutti in Pali, which is a mind or a heart that is free, is liberated. What does it mean to be liberated? That's another question. I mean, liberation is that freedom from sorrow, freedom from suffering. So you practice that freedom from suffering by being happy, by being light, by being calm, by being, have a pep in your step. You see this all the time in my retreats. People start off like very, very serious and concerned, and their heart center is blocked. And then, eventually it opens up and they experience great amounts of joy. And towards the end of the retreat, they're skipping and hopping and they're happy and, bubbly. And so, yeah, start off being bubbly. And from there, you get into those deeper states.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. And that sort of leads me then to this. I'm kind of skipping down my list of questions oh, and some people said that my voice is a little too quiet. Can you hear me okay, Delson?
I can hear you okay. Yeah, we're
okay.
good.
I adjusted it a bit. I hope it worked. But if people let me know, I'll try some more. My question is, how do your practices measure success or breakthroughs? I wonder if we could start with Forrest. So how do you know when you're succeeding? And are there like marks on the forehead or other signs of success that would show us that halos or wings? I'm not sure. What would
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I love it. Well, that's a great question. And it's very, very practical. So the I like to say that Kriya or Pranayama, that's a car. And I would never imagine giving a car to my child with keys, when they turn 18, it's like, here's a car, just go with it, right? And they go down the street 3 feet and they crash the car, right? And so what do you do? What do you do with your kid? Well, you sit down and you go, well, here's the steering wheel. I said this before, right? We said this on one of our other chats. Here's the steering wheel, here's the clutch, here's the brake. And the very first thing you got to learn is, how do I brake? How do I slow this thing down? And that's very much what we're doing. And what I've done with the Kriya is show you how it's working. The HRV resonance, that's a really core thing inside of the Kriya, inside of everybody out there who's practicing Kriya and saying that it is Kriya, they ought to be getting into HRV resonance. And if they're not actually practicing Kriya just yet. And so you'll see that they will hit and they will miss it. And so when they hit it, they're practicing Kriya. And when they miss the HRV resonance, when that is not happening, the meditation is a wash up to that point. And so you have to have HRV resonance in the body to begin with. And so that's going to give you some signs which are in the body. And so I outlined these in the 4 proofs. So the first one is, well, my hands are hot and heavy. So I'm sitting in meditation, I'm making my out breath long. I'm getting into this long breathing, which is very, very comfortable for me. Some people want to immediately put their breath down to 1 breath per minute, and they're stressing themselves. And so that's stress. That's the sympathetic system. We're not having fun. We're not being comfortable. We're not being easy. It has to be very, very comfortable. And so I'm in this long breathing, which is comfortable for me, and my hands start to heat up. I had one gentleman say, "Oh, Forrest, my hands don't get hot. They just get warm." That's it. That's fine. So my hands are hot and heavy or warm and heavy. And well, hands hot and heavy, it HHH, right? It just goes together. And so it's easy to remember that way. But what's happening is it's a galvanic skin response. So your arteries are dilating just a little bit as they relax. It allows more blood flow. It goes into, you might notice it in your hands, but it's happening pretty much everywhere. And so that will warm up your hands. That's the hot. The hands will actually get dry. So when you're in stress, your skin will slightly sweat. And as you get into the parasympathetic system, that sweat, that stress goes away. And so your skin will actually dry. So you'll feel sometimes, this is a little harder to feel, but you'll if you're really noticing what's going on when you go in and out of stress, if you go into the parasympathetic and then you go into the sympathetic system is stress, right? And so as you go into the sympathetic system, the palm will start to sweat. And when you go into the parasympathetic system, the palm will start to dry. So you're drying away from that stress amazingly. And so hands hot and heavy, that's one sign that you're in the parasympathetic. The blood will decrease from your lips. You might feel your bottom lip begin to tingle. And as you make this long exhale into longer breathing, doesn't have to be huge, but I'm making this each out breath just a little bit longer. And that out breath, the diaphragm goes down. Let's see. So the diaphragm goes up and it increases the pressure on your rib cage. And all that pressure is going backwards towards the spine. And so it's going to stimulate the dorsal vagal. So here's your heart, here's your spine, and between your heart and the spine, that's the dorsal vagal. So your whole cavity right here, this little box of your chest, this squeezing everything, and a very wonderful parasympathetic massage of your organs and your spine, and especially the dorsal vagal. So that's causing everything to slow down. And so as all of that happens, there's that pressure on the dorsal vagal. After a while, you start to feel it. And the Kriya Yogis are all about feeling the spine. And they make it really, really hard. It turns into this thing that they never get. But it's actually quite simple. It's just this long out breath. And so if you guys want to try and feel it, we can do it right now. So we just breathe in and just make a nice long out breath. Feel that extra pressure as your chest is going down, the diaphragm is going up, and feel that extra pressure right here in the rib cage. And feel as it goes backwards. See if you can feel your spine. And it might feel like pressure. It might feel like some kind of expectancy. And then eventually it starts to feel blissful and joyous, or even loving. But feel that as you breathe out. And I'm making this big ha out breath so you can hear it, but you can do it through your nose if you like. That's very, very good. Or you can do it out loud with the ha breath, but try it again. Feel that pressure. And that's something to just play with. Just play with as you breathe out, feel the pressure going backwards. And so you start to feel this dorsal vagal complex. And as it gets stimulated, as it gets pressed, you start to feel that. And it starts to get quite joyous. And that's what you're looking for. So that's a sign of the parasympathetic system. And then when we get fairly deep into the parasympathetic system, we might notice some tingling. And we might notice it where we're the most relaxed. So if it's your hands or your arms, you'll feel a little bit of tingling, a little bit of joyous ants crawling. It's not the numbness of loss of blood, right? So you've sat on your leg or you sat on your foot and you had a loss of blood and it tingles and it's not good. It's not fun, right? It's the opposite of that. So it's tingling, but it's absolutely delightful. And it might happen in your face. might happen in your legs, it might happen in your chest, but all of those are signs of the parasympathetic system. And then we sit and we kind of bake in that. So we become the holy potato and we soak in that parasympathetic system. And everybody loves the holy potato. I need t-shirts that say the holy potato. And I did make an image. So we got an image, and next we got to make the t-shirt. But we want to soak in that. And so that's a magical process all in itself. And so what happens is you start to get into, so by the way, any of the 4 proofs are good. So it's like, Forrest, I only have 1. That's it. That's enough. You're in your parasympathetic system. You have proven your meditation is working. And that's like a gigantic pat on your back. Like, oh my God, put the writing on the wall, I have HRV resonance. I have the parasympathetic system. Put that on your wall with lots of balloons. You graduated. It's a big deal. And so then you bake in that. You soak it in. You become the holy potato. You soak in as much as you can of that parasympathetic system, and all these changes are happening in the body and in the mind because of that. And so now you start to get into the freeze response. And when Patanjali talks about pratyahara, he's talking about the freeze response, the results of the freeze response. Those are completely in line. Everything that he says about pratyahara, he's talking about the freeze response. So you touch that much of the freeze response, you're touching that. And so it's a gradual process. It's a lowering of your awareness of the external as you go into the freeze. And your body freezes you every single night that you go to sleep. So this is not some unattainable thing. This is something you enter into every single night that you're asleep. The difference is, in meditation, the mind is awake, the body is asleep. And so you're noticing that calmness settle on the body. The body goes into the freeze response. It is wonderful, isn't it, Bill? And so, yeah, it's quite amazing. And it starts to deepen. So so what are some signs of the freeze response? You might feel that the body becomes a little bit numb. One or more parts of the body or the entire body might become numb. And that's how most yogis begin to bring it up to me, that they notice this numbness. And then, excuse me, as the numbness, so the way that I feel it is as if the body becomes ghost-like. So I feel the body very strongly, right? I'm going for a jog and I really feel the body, whatever, I'm lifting weights and I feel the body very strongly. And then I come into meditation, and that perception of the body, if this is it, that whole thing starts to dim. It's as if I have a dimmer switch and I'm just dimming the light of that perception. So the body is still there, but the perception of it has gone down. And so it seems to get ghost-like or thinner. And so you might notice that in one part of your body or the whole body. So I taught one of my friends meditation. I taught him Kriya. He's like, would you teach me Kriya? I'm like, yeah, sure. And so I started teaching him Kriya, and he calls me up. He goes, I lost the lower half of my body. Is that normal? I'm like, yes, that's the freeze response. He's like, I lost the whole half. I'm like, you lost the whole lower half. This is like in a very short while. He got into this really deep freeze. And it was kind of amazing. He lost the entire lower half of his body. It was just gone. He couldn't find it. It came back, of course, but you lost it for a moment, right? And so you might notice that, oh, my arm is gone, or like the left side of my body, or the right side, or the one leg, or the other leg, And eventually I wrote to Ashok and I said, I keep getting into this state where everything is gone and I'm just my head. Like I'm just like in the box of my skull, and that's all that's left. And he wrote me back. He goes, there should be nothing at all, nothing, no box, nothing, no box. And I'll just remember that no box line for the rest of my life. It was so great. Nothing, keep going, nothing at all. It was great. It was beautiful. And so he's like, yeah, that's great. Keep going. There's more. And so that's what the freeze is doing, is it's wiping out the body. And so that's, so I had this yogi call me up. He's like, I'm not doing that great. all I have is the freeze. And I just reached through the phone and I grabbed him by the little bit. Do you know? Do you know how long it took us to get to the freeze? Do you know how long? It's like, some of us are blessed and it's gorgeous and I love it. And I love how fast you guys go and how deep you go, but you have no idea the pain and suffering to bring us to this point where we can go into the freeze so easy. It's just insane. And then some of you have been through other systems. You got 40 years behind you of pain and suffering, and you're like, holy moly, I'm going really deep, really fast. And I just adore all of that. So that's the freeze. It's very amazing. It's very scientific. So what happens after that? So you start getting up into the heart. And so the end of the Ramayana, that is the journey into the heart. So Sita is the Kundalini. She is the subconscious in you. It's your consciousness which has been turned out into the world, and it has become one with the world, right? And so Sita is stolen by the bad guy, Ravana, taken to an island. The island is Earth. That's the first chakra. And then they go and they win the war. They bring Sita across the water. That's the second chakra, water. And then they bring her to Rama, and there's it seems horrible, right? But it's all for fire so that we can experience fire. So Sita proves herself by stepping into fire. That's the third chakra. And only then does she return to Rama. She embraces Rama, which is the heart. And so that is a chakra journey back into your heart. And so when we're in loving kindness, that's the heart, right? That's the journey into the heart. And so this is another proof. When you have this roll up of consciousness into the heart, you know that, and it's real because you can test it. So I had this worry the other day, and then I'm in this loving kindness in my meditation, and I look back on that worry and I say, can I worry about you? And you don't want to get sucked in, right? You want to ask very lightly, but you look back on that worry, can I worry about you? And you go, not today, not today. And oh my God, you've transcended your lower chakra concerns. Holy moly. Again, go write it down, put it on your wall. I won the Ramayana. I won the Ramayana. Put it on your wall, put up balloons, have a cake, have a parade. You won the Ramayana. And of course, you're going to fall back down. You're going to fall into your lower concerns again, most likely. And then you're going to pull yourself back up. And so every day you're doing something which no one in this world is doing. You are unshackling yourself consistently over and over and over again. And it's freaking glorious. So you're all on this amazing, you guys, you're all on this amazing hero's journey. And it's just crazy, crazy amazing.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Forrest. Now, of course, I'm tempted to ask Delson how we win the Mahabharata, but I'll skip over that.
Oh
And
gosh.
instead ask you, what about how do you measure success or breakthroughs in the TWIM?
John, don't tempt me, please. Don't tempt me. Is the Mahabharata? Oh gosh, here we go. With TWIM, the practice that we do, we start with the Brahma Viharas. We start with loving kindness, and then we go through to compassion, to joy, to equanimity. It's very similar to what Forrest is describing in so far as when we talk about like starting with the heart, having loving kindness for ourselves, and then sending that out to what we call a spiritual friend, a Kalyana Mitta, somebody who we admire, somebody who is alive, somebody that we have genuine friendship with or admiration for. And this evokes that feeling, that natural feeling of loving kindness. When we start off, we start with gratitude. I suggest gratitude as a practice, a powerful practice in of itself. Or you can start off with some kind of wholesome image or memory from your life that makes you smile, that makes you feel happy. Or, you know, the cute baby meditation, have a little baby sitting in front of you, or you're holding the baby or a kitten or a puppy, and it just evokes this smile in the heart and on the face and in the mind. And that process starts the practitioner through the jhanas. And what's understood in the twin practice is that when you get to the fourth jhana, you're already seen as someone who is an advanced practitioner, because of the very fact that you go from the body consciousness, you know, towards the head, and you find that the the body feels more expansive, or it feels more grounded, but then it's also like you don't see or feel the edges between what the body is and what the outside world is. So you start losing connection with the body. Doesn't mean that, you know, you don't have any contact with the body. It's just that when your body is so calm, your mind is so collected, that your entire attention starts to seep up. It starts to go up into the head. And this is a sure sign of what's known as the fourth jhana, where you have very powerful mindfulness, you have equanimity, you have tranquility, and your mind is super collected. And so from there, then we will instruct practitioners to go into radiating or pervading the entire field of awareness with loving kindness. And that's where some people get a little caught up in, because there's a sense of pushing, and you don't want to push. Nowhere in the practice do you want to push, because that, what does that do? That gets you back into the left brain, that gets you back into the analytical state, that gets you back into, I have to do something. So pervading or radiating the space of awareness with loving kindness basically means that you're allowing that experience of loving kindness to grow out of you. You're like a light bulb that's shining the loving kindness out. And what follows immediately is an experience of infinite space. What do we mean by infinite space, by the way? What does that actually mean? Infinite. What it really means in the way I see it is, it's that there is no space. Because when we talk about space, what we're saying is that there's a limitation to that space. We always think of space as something that is limitless, but there's a boundary. There's something that binds you to a certain kind of space. But you take away those boundaries, you take away that binding, and there's boundlessness. And so it's beyond just spaciousness. There is just, you're encompassing even space itself. It goes beyond that. And as you're doing this, you have the experience of compassion. And compassion is a much softer form of loving kindness. It's got a quality of holding space for other people, right? You're spacious itself, but you're holding space for other beings. May they be free of suffering. Maybe they experience happiness just the way I'm experiencing it. And so that then changes into infinite consciousness. Now, at one level, I spoke about this a few talks ago, but you know, infinite consciousness starts off with your entire awareness pervading that entire field of space. And then you start to see the arising and passing away of individual awarenesses that's happening at the level of contact. Whenever light hits the eyes or sound vibrations hit the ears and so on. And this is can be tied to joy, because you're experiencing what's known as mudita. Mudita is the empathetic joy. It's a great antidote to jealousy or envy, because you are actually celebrating in the joy of other beings. You're celebrating in their happiness. You're no longer being like, I want more of that, or why do they have it and I don't have it? It's more like, hey, I'm so happy for this feeling joy, the empathetic joy that arises. And then that changes into nothingness, where the mind actually goes from outward awareness or pervading everything with this experience to now kind of coming back into just the mind itself. And this nothingness or no thingness is just an awareness that there's nothing there. There's nothing there in the mind at this point. The mind is free of most obscurations. And tied to that is equanimity. What is equanimity? In the Bhagavad Gita, for example, Krishna talks about the sthita pragya. The sthita pragya is somebody who is established in wisdom, established in awakening or enlightenment. And such a person withdraws their senses just as the tortoise or the turtle withdraws its limbs. That's the analogy that he gives. So when you are met with challenges, when you are met with turmoil, when you are met with suffering, when you're in that space of equanimity, your mind goes from outward to inward, not because it's retreating, not as a defense mechanism, but it's taking refuge in itself. It's understanding that the only reality that exists is this stable experience of mind that is free of the outside forces, the externalities, the causes and conditions that create fluctuations in the mind. And so this equanimity eventually gives way to what's known as the quiet mind, a luminous mind. And that luminosity of mind creates the ability or the circumstances for the mind to start to see the proto thoughts, the samskaras, the sankharas, the ability to understand what is it that triggers you? What is it that triggers the mind to go from anger to sadness, sadness to hate, and so on? What is it that triggers the mind to be happy and from happiness become greedy and from greediness go into attachment and hold on to things? You start to see this and you're learning by just watching the mind. You're learning by observing the conditions of the mind. And eventually all of that just stops for a moment and the mind experiences great joy, an outburst of joy from the body and the mind that is that's super transcendent. And it's like you have gone through some kind of a acid trip. You've either taken some acid or ketamine or some good stuff somewhere from some music festival, right? And it's like everything becomes so clear, so bright, so collected, and it's like hyper vivid reality. And there's a great sense of relief that is experienced as a result of this. And this is what's understood in this tradition as where the mind experiences nirvana. It has experienced the total snuffing out of the ego, the snuffing out of the smaller self that feels like it is that, right? And because of that, there was this blank that happened because the ego is the one that is experiencing everything. And when that goes away, there is no experiencer. There's only a process of experience. In Vedantic terms or Vedic terms, the experience, the experiencer, and the modes of experience are all joined together. That's one way of understanding. Or another way of understanding it is that you've taken the experiencer out of the whole process, and there's just this experience going on. So that's why I love to quote this very short sutta called the Bahaya Sutta, where the Buddha is giving instruction to a person who says, I want to know the Dharma, the Dhamma, in brief. Just tell me what I need to know immediately so I can get to that nirvana. And the Buddha says, I'm on my lunch break, come back later. So he says it 3 times. He says, please, I might die. If you don't give it to me, I might die and I'll lose out on this wisdom. So the Buddha says, all right, fine. So here is the instruction. In the seeing, there's only the seen. In the hearing, there's only the heard. In the cognizing, there's only the cognized. When, Bhaya, you are not in that process and you are not from that process, when you're not from that process, you're not by that process. Just this is the freedom from suffering. That is to say, take that idea of a personal self out of the equation and everything else is fine. You know, there's a great book called No Self, No Problem. That's what it is. You take away the ego, you take away all that, and what happens? You see the larger picture. That's where the hyper vividity comes in. That's where the understanding of this whole process comes in. And you stop taking things so personally. You start seeing life as it actually is. And so in Buddhist terminology, they call that the destruction of craving. And craving is such a misused word because it somehow means you let go of all desire. No, 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 no. There's a difference between desire and craving. You need desire to meditate. How else are you going to meditate? Desire is neutral. There's a wholesome desire and there's a craving. What is the craving? Craving is the obsession around wanting to own the experience or wanting to never end or trying very hard to keep it going. Craving is also aversion. I don't like what's happening, so I'm pushing it away, or identifying the ego with the practice, with the process. And so that's where the spiritual ego comes about as well. So craving is, in Vedic or yogic terms, what Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita. The essence of the Bhagavad Gita is this: you are entitled to your actions, but not the fruits of your actions. What does that mean? Do the practice. Don't worry about the outcomes of the practice. When you are so in the process of the practice, so in the practice, there's only the practice. There's not even a practitioner. Then everything will work itself out. You don't need to worry about whether I get this or this or this. And that is the destruction of craving. You let go of a desire for an outcome. You let go of an attachment to an outcome. You let go of, and that attachment to an outcome gives rise to greed, hatred, delusion, gives rise to restlessness. It gives rise to the spiritual ego. It gives rise to all of these things. But letting go of that, in every moment, you start to experience the flow of life.
Beautiful. I see, Forrest, I see you nodding enthusiastically at
Very
various
much.
parts here. Anything you'd like to add to that at this point?
Oh, I love it. I love it. And you see this also, this perfect description, and you can see it in the brain. So if you see that you are associated with the processes of the left brain, and that's what we call the beta brainwave, and we're yada da yada da yada da yada da yada. Oh my God, was this ever stop? Right? That's the yada da yada da. That's your left hippocampus specifically, and so we're very heavily associated with those, and we need to use them, and yet we're kind of glued to them in an uncomfortable way. And meditation is a very slow process of getting away from that and towards the process of the right brain, the right hippocampus. And that's that experience of a huge expansiveness is flowing through the right brain. Does it originate from there? No, I don't think so. Is it stop there? Of course not. But that's where it's happening as it goes through your brain, is the right hippocampus. And so we're just leaving that behind and heading towards the right brain. And so at a certain point, I think I said this before, right? So the savikalpa, we're letting go of everything. We're letting go of the ego. We're letting go of that left brain process, and yet there's still a hair of reasoning and recollection. And then we keep going, and we let go of even that. And it's a strange thing. It's very confusing when you're very identified with those processes of the left brain, and we say we're going to let go of that. You're like, well, what's left? And so at a certain point, it definitely feels like you've lost something, and yet at another point, you become more identified with the processes of this expansiveness, and you start to identify with that a lot. And so eventually you don't even, it's not, how can I say, it becomes very normal. And so you start to understand what you're letting go of. and what you still have. And it's that watcher, that seer. You start to recognize that in yourself. You start to identify with that more so than the processes of your left brain. And it's a continuous process, right? So it's just going on and on and on. But that becomes very, very strong. And you can see yourself all the way through it. So you come back and you use the left brain, but you're using it. You're not caught up in it, right? And so that's the difference between having a desire and having a craving that's driving you. It's driving you mad, right? That's just, it's driving you with, it's behind you with whips and chains and you're driven by it. Versus, oh, I think I would like a drink of water. Very simple, very easy, very natural. Nothing wrong with that desire. So this idea that we're going to let go of all desires is kind of, as Delson was saying, it's kind of ridiculous, right? And so it's just the unwholesomeness that we're letting go of this. Oh my God, it's kind of like having kids and you've got plastic over the table or you've got a linoleum floor. It's like the kid spills, you don't care. It's a kid. The kid is going to spill and you wipe it up. It's not a problem. And versus, you've got the fine china set and you're really worried about it, and you've got the rug and you're really worried about it, and the kid cannot the poor kid can't drip anything. You're gonna freak out, right? And so you've got a wholesome state and a manic state. And so wonderfully described, of course, by Delson. But yeah, as we get over to that right side, then those processes are going to wink out. And it's not that you are the Satchit Ananda. That's what you are. So that's not winking out. It's everything else which is winking out. And so in that winking out process, what you thought you were winks out. And you go, oh, where did I go? And then eventually you go, oh, wait a minute. The real me is still here. And maybe you think about that after the experience, maybe the experience is so deep, you're just sitting there thinking about it. It's like, wait a minute, I was still there. And so I had a student and I like to teach that because we want to go easily into these really deep states. And so if you have this idea that you're going to die, that, maybe that's a little scary. And so if you can understand that the true you is going to be there, and the false you, what you thought was you, the personality, the binary choices that you made as a child that created your personality, you're letting go of that part of you. And so if you can understand that, it makes it a little easier to enter into some of these very, very deep states than being afraid, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen. And it's quite, every time I went into a deeper state, I freaked out a little bit. So a little bit of freak out is totally okay. It's totally natural. And because it happened, I'm like, why does this keep happening? This is my whole life and I'm still freaking out about it. So it's very natural, but eventually it gets easier and easier as you get more associated with those processes on the right side of the brain. And so I had this wonderful student, and he knows that I talk about, you're not actually going to die. So don't think that the real you is not dying. It's the false you, which is falling away. And so he knows that I teach that, right? And so he goes into a samadhi. He goes, what was this experience? I said, well, that's a samadhi. I confirmed it for him because he lost his all sensation of the body. The entire body was gone. The sensation of breathing was gone. And so the whole personality was gone, right? And so I'm like, okay, yeah, that was a samadhi. Good job. And he goes, and then I died. And I said, really? How interesting. So you were gone. So it's like you fell asleep. Oh, no. I didn't fall asleep. Oh, so you were there. Well, yeah, it was there. It was like HD resolution. It was like I've never been alive before. Oh, good. So what died? And he thought about it. He goes, the words died. That's it. The false you is falling away and the real you is revealed. And so what you thought was you, what you associated to be you, your normal mode of life, and the mask of your own personality, which you use every single day. I'm using it right now. This is my mask. That falls away, and you realize what you actually are, like you. And so all those processes are gone when it gets really deep. So we go into the Savikalpa, most of it is gone, little hair hangs on. We go into the Nirvikalpa, it's all gone. And oh my God, the peace of your right brain. So Delson, what were you calling it? That relief? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Was it relief? That was the word?
Relief. Yeah.
Relief. It's just an insane relief. It's just, this is the peace that surpasses all understanding, which Jesus was talking about. This is it. That kind of relief. You're just free. You're just so free. And it gives you so much rest and peace. It's just, it's beyond normal feelings. These are not normal feelings. These are transcendent feelings. And it will just, you come back to your personality. And again, you feel like you were born again. And so this idea of being reborn, which the yogis talk about and the Christians talk about, this idea that you are reborn, it happens because you come back to your personality, you come back to that mask, and you feel fresh. You get that feeling that, oh my God, I was reborn. So I love it. I love everything that Delson is saying, and I totally agree.
Very cool. Very cool. I see that we're over an hour in, and I've unfortunately only got to a few of my 30 questions that I had, but they'll still be there next time, I'm sure. So maybe we can open up the floor a bit. I think Shadi was first, and I see you've written something, but and you have your hand up too, so I'm not sure if you want to ask it or if you want me to read it. I'll just hand it over to you, Shadi, if you'd like to.
Oh, thank you, John. No, that question was just a little moment. I had a bigger question that I actually came into today's session with. I received a text from a friend of mine about trauma, and that the nervous system is being driven by, colonialization and, power over politics and all of that kind of, to me, very prevalent dialogue that's going on in our world, and necessary in some ways. But I was wondering, from Forrest and from Delson, how does this whole conversation around, because what she's saying is that my nervous system is actually created by, colonization, which I have no ability to change, right? Like, it happened back there. And so how does that all interact with meditation and with this idea of joy and fun? Am I ignoring the trauma of my own people? I mean, I was born in apartheid South Africa, Am I ignoring that? Like, I just don't know where to place this inside of my meditative journey, if you will. I don't know if I asked that question clearly enough, but there it is.
Well, I guess I'll start. The idea that you can fix the world immediately, of course, is ridiculous, right? We're not going to fix the whole world immediately. We're just one little person. And so, okay, where is my sphere of influence? What do I have influence over? And the very first person I have influence over is me. And so if I say, well, this is this circle of my influence, and it's right here, this is what I have control over. And so the actions of others, I don't have control over those people. Maybe I would like to. Maybe I would like to control all of them and the entire world, but I can't. But I certainly can start right here. And so I would begin with me. I'll begin with my own mind. And then as I get a little peace, I get a little bit of joy, then I can spread my circle just that much bigger. And so the people in my family come next, right? Or my immediate friends, they come next. And so that's very important, right? I don't want to skip over my family. And so the Christians, they talk about being a street angel and a house devil, right? And so now maybe I started with myself, but I forgot my family. Well, that's not going to work out very well. So I should really start with my family, with the family unit, with my very close friends, and then go a little bit farther and a little bit farther, and maybe go out to my community, or maybe go out and start a blog, or some way that I affect my community, and then I can start helping my community and slowly grow my influence. But so you'll hear some people talk about, I'm a product of this, or I'm a product of that. And certainly we can understand that there are influences around us, and it's good to know those influences and to understand them and where they're coming from. But to say that you are a victim of them puts the power in their hands. Mm-hmm. So whenever we take away our own power and we give it to somebody else, well, now you're on call waiting, because you have to wait for that person to let go of the power that you gave them before you can change. And so now I'm a victim, and now I don't have to do anything. I can just sit here and be in my victimhood and wait for somebody else to solve all of my problems, which is, I'm going to be waiting a very long time, right? So what if I just take my power back and say, whatever happened, I somehow chose this. I decided to come into this incarnation. I didn't have to. I could have picked a different incarnation, but I picked this one. And so I'm going to hypothesize that that is what I did. And so I'm going to take a little bit of ownership of what is going on. And that ownership, even though it feels sometimes uncomfortable, right? It's like, oh my God, I have to own this. Yes. Well, when I own it just a little bit, all of a sudden, all the power comes back to me. Now I own the power. I have something that I can do about it. And of course, it starts with me, right? And so when we work from the place that we have the most leverage, which is ourself, you can make vast changes. Whereas if you're trying to leverage the entire world, well, it's a very large feat for anyone to accomplish. And so what if we start with ourselves, right? So if we start at home, it all starts to make sense, right? It all starts to work correctly. So it's not that we're ignoring what is going on. It's how much can I affect that? Am I going to be, if I spend my whole life running after the next cause, how effective do I think I will be in 5 or 10 years? Where will I be mentally and emotionally in 5 or 10 years if I just only chase fixing other people, other things which are outside of me? Will I be effective or will I not? Probably not. And we can fast forward. We can think ahead and go, where is this going? And where is this going? And where is this going? And how am I going to spend my life doing that, chasing all of that outside of myself versus choosing to be here and begin with myself?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Forrest. Delson, I'm wondering if you have anything you want to add.
Yeah, I agree with Forrest on this with regards to the fact is the only sphere of influence that we have immediately is ourselves and how we choose to deal with what's happening right now, right here. Sometimes I've had questions similar to this, talking about generational karma or the karma of society or certain countries and so on. And there's a interesting dialogue that happens with the Buddha where he talks about, at the time of the Buddha, everybody thought very similar, which is that, it's our karma and whatever we've done in the past, and not only what we've done in the past, but what we in this life, but even in previous lives, and our ancestors and all of these things that are now leading into what we're experiencing here and now. And the Buddha said, if we go down that road of just thinking about, okay, this is what happened, it will actually make our head explode, because we're trying to figure out the causes and conditions, and we start to identify with those causes and conditions. And in that sense, we start to take away that power, as Forrest said. If we focus on what's happening right here, what are the causes and conditions that led to this particular moment in time? And am I able to do something about it? And so the Buddha even said that there are other aspects to this reality outside of karma, which includes our environment, which we're not necessarily in control of, which includes our health and maybe things that we've inherited in terms of diseases that we're not necessarily in control of. Accidents happen, we're not in control of that. The Buddha even says something even more radical about that. And he says, we're not even in control of ourselves, and that I think we can see in our everyday reality is that we as human beings are conditioned by our past circumstances and experiences. And to break the patterns, we have to first be aware of those patterns. But it doesn't mean that we have to identify with those patterns that cause the continual resurgence of those patterns. This is what's known as bhava in Sanskrit or Pali, which basically means to become or to re-become. That process of rebirth or reincarnation everybody talks about from lifetime to lifetime happens on a daily basis, happens on a moment-to-moment basis. You'll find for yourselves in your own reality and in your experiences that even if you have moved to a different country, you somehow get yourself involved in similar kinds of friend circles or in similar kinds of relationships or in similar kinds of life situations. Why? Because our minds are conditioned by the past. And we take all of that and we don't realize that we're causing this or re-causing it over and over again. So the process of recognizing that and using the tools and technologies that are available to you, whether that's TWIM or Kriya or forgiveness or anything else that helps you acknowledge that trauma, that helps you acknowledge all of the baggage of the nervous system, and then being able to let that go, now you become spontaneous. That is the true meaning of spontaneity, which is unconditioned action, an action that is free from the conditioning and the shackle of my past. And it is attuned to what is required right here, right now. And in doing so, you tear asunder all of that stuff. Maybe not immediately, but you start to break away at it bit by bit. But at the same time, you don't cause yourself further suffering and further identification and further, reliving of that trauma.
Thank you so much, both of you. Very inspiring response.
Great, thanks. Well, we'll just pick up your other question, Shadi, which is please define loving kindness. I hear it described differently in different traditions. I think it might be interesting to hear what Forrest and Delson have to say about loving kindness. Maybe Forrest, you would tell us.
Sure. Well, you're coming up into the heart, and so you're coming up. It's not jealousy. It's not. It's this pure love, the pure love of a mother for the child, or the pure love of the true love of a lover for another lover. It's that love which is coming out of you, and it has this. The Buddhists talk about this loving kindness so beautifully that it's not just love, but it's kindness, right? It's love and kindness. It's beautiful, just a beautiful description. And so you're going to feel, you're going to hear many people talk about it slightly differently, but the experience is actually having your consciousness come up into the heart. And so you have to be able to, at a certain point, you want to make sure that you're actually above your old worries and concerns. And so people can have love on their lips, and yet they're still very, very worried and concerned. And they're very, they're back in that craving. They're back in that manic state a little bit. And so they're just pointing up to love, but they're not actually in the love. And so there's a vast difference. When you are actually in the loving kindness, you're suddenly above those worries. You feel that the world is somehow set right momentarily. You're in that altered state where you have transcended those worries. And so that's a kind of yogic perspective. You're really coming up into this portion of your nervous system. It's a completely different nervous system than your lower nervous system. So if you look at an anatomical representation of your nervous system, you'll notice that the nervous system is very, very put together until it gets right below your heart. And then it just goes, I mean, it really does. It's kind of crazy. Look up the horse's tail, which is in your nervous system. So they call it the horse's tail because right below the heart, your nervous system just spreads out amazingly. And it's like a tail of a horse. It's just spreading out everywhere through the body. And so that's a really fascinating thing to see, and then correlate it with what is happening to us in meditation when we rise back up into the heart. And as Delson was saying, we become collected. Well, right there, you can see it inside of the nervous system, that you're coming out of the horse's tail and you're getting into this very, very more put together upper nervous system, which we've probably all experienced that love, like the love of our mother, the love of our father, the love of our grandfather at some point. And we can kind of know what that tastes like. And then you come up in meditation, you actually taste it for real.
Would you recommend doing the cute baby meditation as a loving kindness practice, doing the cute baby meditation and then radiating out that sensation that one experiences from the cute baby?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you want to start with where your heart is at. So I had some students say to me that, so this might not be your case, but in some cases you'll find that they're trying to push the cute baby meditation beyond where their heart is at. And so what you have to do is you have to feel that naturalness where you see the baby, you go, oh my God, it's so cute. And you just hold that feeling of cuteness, of awe at the cuteness as long as you can. And however long you can stretch it, that's how you stretch it. And then you let it go. And then you come back, you see it, oh my God, it's so cute. And you hold that and you just stretch it as long as you can. And you're just stretching your heart, and you're actually growing your connection, your ability to access your own left amygdala. So it's extremely powerful. Your left amygdala, every time you use it that way, it's actually growing. It's actually getting bigger. So we could look at a brain scan of you before the cute baby meditation, and then years and years after cute baby meditation practice over and over again, we're going to see that your left amygdala has actually grown.
Beautiful. Delson, anything to add on loving kindness?
Yeah, so a couple of things to add to that is, with loving kindness, it's a so I want to just go at it from the perspective of the literature in terms of like where does it come from? What word does it come from? It comes from the word maitri, or metta in Pali, which means to be a friend, a friendliness. And it's not the conditional friendliness, right? Which is like, you do something for me and I'll do something for you. It's more like, hey, I really appreciate this person just for being the person that they are, and I feel a connection with them. When we're little kids, again, I go back to that. Like when we're on the playground and we find somebody else on the playground, we do just friend. There's no like or buts or anything. It's just, hey, now you're my friend. Let's go hang out. Let's have fun. Let's just do whatever we're doing. The cute baby meditation is a great meditation because it evokes that feeling that a mother has for a child. It evokes this appreciation for that feeling. And the feeling of loving kindness, you want to be able to feel it for yourself as much as you can. Like really let the entire heart be kind of soaking in that feeling of loving kindness, because that's going to help you also transcend into that process of radiating. You don't want to force yourself. Again, you don't want to stretch out. You don't want to force yourself to be loving and kind to all beings immediately. We go back to like what Jesus said, right? Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, in today's world, nobody really loves themselves. We think people love themselves because they're narcissists and all of these things, but we're talking about real love, real loving kindness to ourselves, which means what? A narcissist comes from a lack of self-love. A narcissist comes from like a deep need for being appreciated, a deep need for being attended to. Why? Because they can't find their heart is dried up. But if we can soak the feeling of loving kindness into the heart, then naturally we will want to be friends with the rest of the world. Naturally, we will want to share that feeling. The quality of the feeling of loving kindness is, I mean, if I were to talk about it psychosomatically, at least in my experience, it's a warm glow in the heart. It's this like fuzziness that you get, right, when you see the cute baby or whatever it is. It's just like this, like really warm, fuzzy, bubbly feelings. And you just feel it for yourself first. When you do this, everything else starts to unfold naturally. Then you want to send it to one person, then two people, then three people, and then it just goes out on its own to the rest of the existence.
Beautiful, thank you. So I'll go to Steve Lauer.
Thanks, John. Just want to say to Delson and Forrest that we are so incredibly lucky to have you guys, both as individual teachers and as you guys coming together. Myself, I've learned so much from both of you and continue to. So just want to say that. How often do you get, spiritual giants to come together into a format where it's accessible to people? Ask, addressing individual questions, all the stuff that are burning, questions and so on. So just want to really, convey my appreciation and gratitude. And just a relatively simple question, or maybe it's not, is just around any thoughts about ongoing collaboration between, continuing collaboration between you two. So that's it. Thank you.
John, I think we jumped the gun here. Yeah. Sorry. We are going to
think that's one of our
about that
topics.
eventually, I believe.
I hope
Yeah,
so.
yeah. But Forrest, please. Yeah.
Oh, we were talking about maybe we can do retreats together or have classes together. And so that's kind of the idea here, is that we're presenting together and seeing how we work together, and how meaningful is this for you? Is this clicking with you? Is this making sense to you? Is this working well for you? And that's our venture, to see how it's going for you guys. And certainly we're going to use each other's material as we move forward, and offer a wider and wider buffet. I like to say I'm not giving you one practice, I'm giving you 20, 50 practices, and we're just creating the most efficient tool belt in the universe for meditation, so that maybe you have this one tool, you haven't used it. Oh my God, this tool works so amazingly. This was so great. And so you have this buffet of choices, so that you come to meditation and you just have all these things. I remember the first time I came to a buffet as a kid, it was like, oh my God, if I come into paradise, this is amazing. It's like so many choices. I don't even know what to do. Right. And that's what I want for you, is that you are able to have so many choices on what you can do, and you can have that fun and that joy and that spontaneity that we've been talking about, to just use what you think might be best for you in the moment. And you let that inner intuition, that inner guidance come to you and allow to guide you in your deep meditations. And that's the real way. As Ashok told me, look, my only job is to get you to the medulla. That's what he told me on the very first day that I met him. It blew me away. He actually read my mind, because I'm thinking, is this going to work out? Is this guy going to be my guru? I'm just thinking about it. And embarrassingly enough, he heard that thought, and I didn't even realize it until later, but he heard that thought and he immediately answered. He's like, look, my only job is to get you to the medulla, where you have the inner guidance. You have that inner voice guiding you, and then you will be guided from within. It's not about me. It's about that inner guidance. And so that's what we're trying to do, is set you up for that kind of success continuously. And I adore this collaboration. So I adore the Brahma Viharas. So Ashok told me, go towards the bliss. And the bliss is in the heart. The bliss is in the heart. So when we're coming into loving kindness, we're coming into that region. So the Brahma Viharas are a wonderful way. So when I first started talking about bliss, I had some students that I think I'm missing the bliss, because I'm not getting this huge, huge bliss that you're talking about. And I'm like, okay, I'm talking about it I'm not talking about it on a subtle enough level. And so I started to, okay, we have to understand that it's a little more subtle than just one big, huge experience. That's one possibility. And yet there are all these levels of possibilities within it. And the four Brahma Viharas describe that wonderfully. And it's not, as Delson said so wonderfully, it's not that you're leaving the love behind as you ascend into compassion. No, it's a growing of that love. The love becomes compassionate and expansive, and then out of that comes this natural joy. And so you're just coming up higher and higher into the upper nervous system. So I see this as a beautiful, beautiful collaboration between us, very, very much aligned, very, very much experiencing these very deep states and understanding what that means, and then coming back to report on it. I think it's I think it's kind of glorious. So I think it's kind of perfect, and I love it. Very thankful for it.
Yeah, I gotta enthusiastically agree with Forrest on that, because I see a lot of great possibility for us to collaborate on retreats, on books, on different things. I mean, this platform alone has been so much fun, and we're about halfway through now, a little over, halfway through the entire series. I just wish it never stopped, but that's just life. That's my craving there. But the collaboration could be in a whole host of different ways, and that's something we can talk about when we get to that particular talk or topic. But Forrest and I have talked offline about I know he's working on a few things, and we share each other's sort of material. We talk, we discuss, and I think it'd be great. I mean, there's so much we could do, and it's just a matter of practicality, like time, place, all of that stuff. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, if you guys are vibing with us and you survive to the end of this whole 7-week talk, we'll see. I would love it. I would love it.
Great, thank you both so much. Yeah, I mean, the friendship is so obvious, and also the compatibility of the approach and the material and the energy. It's just a real joy to be part of, as Steve said before. All right, so Pasindu, I think you're up next.
Dear teacher, I have a quick question to ask. My question is, what should be done to grow our panya or wisdom, according to sutta, according to experience? If somebody want to grow his wisdom, he or she, what has to do? That's my question.
My question to you would be, what is your understanding of wisdom?
My understanding about wisdom, anicca, dukkha, anatta. If somebody can identify about impermanency and other things, I think that might be the wisdom. If I am not right, please let me know.
So you're on the right track when we talk about the perception of anicca, dukkha, and anatta, which is translated as impermanence, suffering, and not self, that which is not self. These perceptions, like the perception of impermanence, leads to the perception of dukkha. The perception of dukkha leads to the perception of not self. The perception of not self leads to equanimity. The perception of equanimity leads to disenchantment. What is that disenchantment that we talk about? It's not a process of revulsion or like, I don't like this. It's more of, I've had enough of this. Like I've been overstimulated by the senses. I've been overstimulated by the mind, and I've had enough. I've had enough of my food. I always use this example, which is, everybody now knows at this point, if they've seen my talks, I love chocolate cake. So I'll always use chocolate cake as an example, right? You give me a piece of chocolate cake and I'll eat that and I will love it. I will enjoy it. And you say, I want to give you another piece of chocolate cake. And me in my craving will say, sure, give it to me. I will have some more. And then you give me a third, and I say, I don't want to be rude, but I already feel full, but I'm going to eat that piece of third chocolate cake. By the time you give me the fourth piece, what am I feeling? I hate chocolate cake. I don't want chocolate cake, right? It's the same thing with overstimulation of the senses. You want to see, you want to feel, you want to hear, you want to do all of these things. But at some point, it becomes overwhelming. And it's like, no, I keep that away from me. And it happens naturally. It's not something that you can bring up. It's not something that you can immediately say, okay, now I want to feel disenchanted. It comes through this step-by-step process of realizing the process of, oh, everything that we see in this world and experience is impermanent. Therefore, if I hold on to it, I'm going to cause myself unnecessary suffering. And when I cause myself suffering, I see that this isn't actually me, mine, or myself. This isn't the real me. This isn't the real mind. This isn't the real myself. And therefore, my mind becomes equanimous. It starts to withdraw, not out of aversion, but out of like, okay, I come back to the stability of the collected mind. That leads into disenchantment. That disenchantment leads to dispassion, viraga or vairagya, as it's known in Sanskrit. What does that mean, that dispassion? It means my mind remains undisturbed and unaffected by what is happening outside. It becomes like Teflon. Anything that comes into the mind, it doesn't stick to it. And from there, the mind ceases all connectivity from the outside world and all connectivity from the conditioned aspects of the mind, and experiences liberation. Maybe it's temporarily, but at least you experience freedom from that suffering. So the wisdom that we talk about is the understanding that this whole process is impersonal, that what is happening to us in terms of our karma, what is happening to us in terms of the experiences that we're having, what's happening in terms of the good, bad, and ugly of life, is not to be seen as me, mine, or myself. So there's the experience of shunyata. Now, this is very interesting. We have shunyata on one side, and we have purnata on the other side. What do I mean? Shunyata, from the Buddhist perspective, is all is empty of a personal, separate self. And purnata means it is complete, it is full. That you will see on the other side, which is the Vedic, yogic, Vedantic side, that I am the cosmic ocean. I am all that there is. These two are not incompatible. These two are the two sides of the same coin. It just depends on where you want to bring your experience, because even the Buddha has talked about nirvana or nibbana, or the experience of dissolving, as being in the ocean and as minuscule as the sands. So there's like this understanding of anatta or shunyata, emptiness, and this experience of fullness and completeness. But it's not a fullness and completeness that the spiritual ego identifies with. It's a fullness that is beyond the grasp of our immediate conditioned sense experiences. And that wisdom that we're talking about is developed through, first and foremost, just like in yoga, you have yamas and niyamas. In the suttas, in the practice of the Eightfold Path, you have sila, you have morality, you have ethics, you have a certain standard of practice and behavior that you go by for the purposes of calming and collecting the mind. Sila leads to samadhi. Samadhi is the mind that gets collected and experiences these super mundane states, as we call them in the Pali, jhanas, or different states of meditation. That leads to panya. So we've defined panya as the experience of seeing everything as an impersonal process, but that which leads to it is very, very simple. Might not be easy to practice, or it can be easy to practice if you just give your entire heart to it. And this is where I want to talk about something that I don't think a lot of people touch upon in Buddhism, which you don't find a lot, but it's called grace. and it's taking refuge. There's a Sanskrit word called sharanagati, and it's sometimes translated as surrender, but it's really taking refuge in the Buddha, taking refuge in the Dharma, taking refuge in the Sangha. Taking refuge in the Buddha means taking refuge in the possibility of becoming awakened, that there is indeed a path and there is a possibility of becoming awakened right here, right now. Taking refuge in the Dharma, taking refuge in the teachings, the systems, the methodologies, not for taking them as identification processes, but as guides leading you to what is possible. And taking refuge in the Sangha is taking refuge in externally the community that's around you that is supportive of your practice, the like-minded practitioners, the like-minded, people here that we're talking with. And internally taking refuge in your own mind, because ultimately your mind is the maker of all things. Your mind is chief. Your mind is the maker of your emotions. The mind is the maker of your world. So taking refuge in it with the understanding that it will lead you towards Nibbana. What we call as grace, whether you're religious or spiritual or atheist, doesn't matter. But what I'm talking about as grace is taking refuge in something greater than your ego, taking refuge in something that is greater than what you see as me, mine, or myself. And the practice of that, in practical terms, is to always understand with humility that this could be my last moment. If this is my last moment, how do I want to spend it? Do I want to spend it in refuting doctrine, or do I want to spend it in celebrating what is happening right here, right now, within the confines of what we call ethics, within the confines of what we call as samadhi and meditation? All of that naturally leads towards wisdom or panya.
Much
Great,
merits
thank
to you.
you.
Much merits to you.
Mhm. Thanks. Okay, Quilly is up.
Hi guys. Yeah, this has been is really fun. It's the most fun I've had in meditation. Forrest, I wanted to ask you something. So I've done a lot of jhana practice, and as I've studied with different teachers and different approaches to jhana practice, they describe what the experiences are differently. And interestingly, I don't always jive with what they're saying, but if I'm doing metta jhana practice, I will experience piti differently than if I'm doing pawak sayadaw, which is very intense. And so you were this morning talking about some sensations that you get with HRV, and I've just gone over to YouTube and I'm breathing at 3 breaths a minute along with that little video and I've just been doing that this week before I meditate. So it's 11 minutes, I think. And I have had what I would call PT, but I wouldn't say that I've had warm hands, though I do get tingle hands. And so I'm just wondering if I'm trying to find over in HRV PT, and it's not what you're talking about. Anyway, could you speak to that?
So you are finding the tingling. So that is.
Yeah. And so, it's odd. I often get tingling in the back of my arm.
Perfect. So that is the parasympathetic. And so we're heading, once we get to the tingling, we're heading in the direction of the freeze response. And so usually the tingling will be one of the very first signs that you are entering into the freeze response. It's all the parasympathetic. So it's kind of this ocean of experience. But as we head towards the tingling, we're usually heading into that freeze response. And so the next thing to notice might be that, so by the way, what I said about those 4 proofs is that any one of them is proof that you are using your parasympathetic system. So it's not that we have to get every single one. It's like, oh, look, there's one. Okay, so that means my parasympathetic is online and I am getting out of stress. I'm getting out of the sympathetic system. So this meditation is a success. And so then as you keep going into that freeze and you soak in those good experiences, those good feelings, and those good states of mind, as you soak in those, then you become the holy potato. And you might notice the next thing, that parts of the body dim from your awareness. You might lose parts of your body. Like you might look down at your body and go, wait, are my feet here or did I lose them? Right? And so that's a wonderful sign that you're heading into the freeze. Some yogis will tell me that parts of my body become numb. And it's always going to be the part of the body which is most relaxed. So again, it's all about relaxation. And we're going to notice that part of the body which is most relaxed will begin to tingle, or it will begin to dim or become numb from our awareness first, or it might even disappear. And so all of that is the freeze response, or like I talk about it. So that's another sensation of the freeze response, that the body becomes ghost-like. There's another experience that you might have where the skin becomes like a shell, like you're so frozen in place. You can feel a little bit of energy moving in the body, but the surface of the body feels as if it is a shell and you don't want to break it. And then you move and you break that freeze, and you can feel yourself break through that freeze a little bit. So all of those are very, very slightly blissful in the body. As we feel all of these, they will feel very slightly blissful. And as we keep going, that bliss in the body actually increases, like that feeling of enjoyment of this peace in the body becomes bigger.
Well, I think I notice when I come to a new practice that I try to fit it into what I already know. And so really the basic question I was asking is, are you talking about what I would call PT? Rapture?
Tell me what is that for you?
Well, usually it's sensational, and I've had it with certain practices where it goes on for days, and it's just sensational all over the body, from very, very pleasant to, this is enough kind of feeling in deep jhana work. But are we talking, if it's a sensation, is it PT?
Well, that would be part of it. Yeah, absolutely. That would be part of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I haven't ever done any Kriya work, so I was just doing this breathing before my regular practice, but I might go over to your website and see what's next to do. Because I have a pretty good arrival, and my breath changes, but that was very deliberate, and I liked what it did. So appreciate you.
That's it. That's perfect. That's what we want. We want something which is deliberate and reliable. Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, and Herbert, thank you for your patience.
And Forrest, you gotta trademark the holy potato. You gotta get t-shirts, you gotta get coffee cups, you gotta get all of these.
That's it, right? I love the holy potato, because we're so do, and we forget to sit back and enjoy and soak it in. Like, why did we come here? And that's really the thing. We want to soak it in. And so it's just a picture is worth 1,000 words. And it's like the attitude becomes so perfect. I'm just going to sit here. I'm just going to soak this in forever. And it becomes, I love the holy potato. And it makes everybody laugh. It makes everybody smile. We don't take ourselves so seriously. We're serious Kriya yogis and Buddhists, and we take ourselves so seriously. And then, we're the holy potato, or become as a child, and it's like, we don't have to be so serious.
Yeah, beautiful.
The Irish half of me loves it, and and I'm sure I've got a couch here somewhere that I could be a holy couch potato on.
Right?
So Herbert, over to you. Thanks for
yes. I wanted to share. I wanted to ask a question and share something. I stumbled on YouTube over, I'm not sure what I was doing. I was stumbled off YouTube. That relates what the question what I asked last week about this kind of strange have things happen in the Middle East. So, and I saw, it's a bit sad what I'm saying, but you know, I saw in the Tibet, I saw some of the leaders, the communist leaders, mistreating a young Tibetan boy, because you know they take them from the children and they bring them in their schools and they try to somehow. And logically, it was a bit upsetting. And then I was thinking about what you said last week, and I was in a meditative state, in a relaxing state, anyhow. And all of a sudden, I felt so sorry. I felt, well, that guy who's mistreating me suffers more than the boy. I could see in the face, well, he has issues, is that guy. You think, you know, he has problems. And I've started to feel so sorry for him because, wait a minute, he's in a very miserable place. Even he doesn't even know it, you know. So I just wanted to share that. And that was liberating. That gave me a bit of better perspective on my family in the Middle East and so on. But then another YouTube thing I stumbled over, sorry YouTube, which was very interesting. I never heard that before. I had hints from Delson on that in a YouTube video I watched when he was speaking with Guru Viking and Shinsen Yang. It was that was one of the best videos I've ever watched. So, and that video, a small video, 23 minutes, the Buddha didn't teach oneness. Wow, let me listen to that. And I listened to that. And I thought there is some of these kind of, you know, new age guys saying something. Sorry, not being directly for the new age case, just stay with it, you know. And then he explained from the feeding viewpoint, which I never really thought about it, that human beings feed. Your stomach, he said literally, the Buddha said that, he mentioned few sutras, I cannot remember the sutra. The Buddha said you feed. The stomach feeds. Animals feed on animals. And human beings feed. I just synthesized. I didn't understand it whole 100% completely because I had to listen to it again. So the human being feeds on anger. The human being feeds on sadness, feeds on depression, and so on. And then he explained deeper in a more philosophical way what the Buddha actually was teaching. So it is a bit too complicated maybe to explain, and I don't even understand it 100% also in the terms. He mentioned a few sutras. But what it is, what I more and more realized, the Buddha, even Tanisari Bhikkhu said something similar, the Buddha more and more is not so much interested in the philosophical debate itself, or the self doesn't exist, or oneness, because logically I love oneness, because, you know, that Vaita tradition, Vedanta tradition speaks about one, we all one, and, you know, there's no problems, you know, the neo-Vaitas say that, you know, which is sometimes very relaxing, but I don't believe it, so, and so on. And then, if you think of that, actually, then I realize actually the Buddha actually wants to teach where he's starting about to end suffering. He's not so much interested in an idealistic state, even if he speaks about in the Heart Sutra, there is no feeling, and so on, so on. And he speaks also in the impermanence about it, that is things, and there is no self. But what is more interesting is, for example, because that makes more sense, because our nature is animalistic. You know, I'm always hungry. I eat a lot. I'm always hungry. You know, I like a lot of sex. You know, so I cannot always have it. So I have to control it, and I have to do something about it, and I have to deal with it, and so on and so on. And you have to get rid of these attachments. And that is why I wanted to ask this question to both of you. I would explain that a bit more, which is kind of what is feeding actually me, because it is not so easy sometimes this concept to understand, because it goes quite deep into the thinking of the factors, and also especially it goes also in the situation of the five aggregates. Because I remember when you were speaking with Jensen Yang, that you use a lot the 5 aggregates to have a long reach into the jhanas. You know, I remember that, and you mentioned when they ask you, but how you got there? Yeah, but we're using a lot the 5 aggregates, and when I then meditate, it's a bit difficult to relate to. You know, you sit there, want to relax, and you relax, you know, and you want to create the place, you know. You're not necessarily thinking
sorry, Herbert. Sorry.
Sorry.
Excuse me. Yeah, I'm having a hard time. Could you synthesize your question into something that could be answered?
About this feeling, what is oneness? What more particular, what you think about that? Sorry, I got carried away.
That's okay. So I will say, one is, 5 aggregates meditation. John, if you can find it and share it on the group, it'd be great, because there is a guided practice that I've given on YouTube, where you go through the jhanas and then you go into each of the 5 aggregates, and then from there you experience a greater sort of, I wouldn't say oneness, because the oneness is just like I was telling you earlier, like shunyata, the emptiness, and the fullness, which is the experience of oneness or whatever, is essentially 2 sides of the same coin. It's just a matter of what pathway you're using. So the other way to explain it is it's the experience of interdependence. There's a very nice video of Thich Nhat Hanh who talks about this. And he talks about how you realize that the water that's there on the surface of the earth, when it goes, it doesn't go completely. It changes into the cloud. And then that cloud then drips down into water again. And so there is this process of interdependence. Next time you guys go and have your meal, look at your meal and understand, what are the processes that led to this meal coming together? The farmers that had to pick the crops, the farmers that had to harvest the crops, the farmers that had to tend to the crops, and then the water that was there from the clouds, and then the distribution of that food and everything that led to it is one process. My life is not my own life. Our lives are not our own lives. We are dependent upon others one way or the other. We are interdependent with each other. And this is the nature not only of pro-social behavior of just humans, but I would say that it's for all beings in entirety, in existence, one way or the other. We seek to connect. The universe is teeming with trillions and quadrillions and quintillions of different forms of life that all seek to connect one way or the other. And what happens is, the reason why we have, at least in my view, in my understanding, that we have violence and we have conflict, is because we have ignorance of that. We forget about that. We forget that it's not about black versus white. It's not about Palestinian versus Israeli. It's not about, us versus them. That's the ideology. That's the system that we have been part of for the last 200, 300,000 years as human evolution. Now, in the last 50 years, in the last 60 years, in this 20 years, we are starting to see a different kind of humanity come about, which is, hey, and it's not everybody, obviously, because we still have wars, we still have conflict, but there is sort of a process in which minds are seeing that there's beyond the egocentric, beyond the ethnocentric, beyond the world-centric. We're talking about an integrated process. For those of you who are familiar with Ken Wilber, he talks a lot about this. And that process is to transcend and include. You transcend the animalistic nature, but that doesn't mean you push it aside. You include it within the entire realm of all possibility. You take into account for it that it is still there. Doesn't mean that you have to fight it. Anything you continue to fight continues to grow. And that's why I love this one statement by R. Buckminster Fuller. Hopefully I don't mess it up. But the statement is, you don't change the existing reality by fighting it. Instead, you put a new model in its place so that the old one becomes obsolete. And this is what meditation is. This is what TWIM is. This is what Kriya practice is. We are replacing the animalistic models. We are replacing the animalistic tendencies so that eventually the joy, the supramundane joy, the transcendent bliss, the equanimity becomes so overwhelmingly powerful in our system that all of that becomes obsolete. But it starts with ourselves. It starts with us. And that grows into that experience of understanding everything as one, not in the sense that we are all coming from one consciousness, which is a valid statement from the perspective of this two sides of emptiness and fullness. But the realization on a practical level, the everyday level, because the experience of emptiness and the experience of fullness can only be experienced through beyond the senses, outside of the scope of the conditioned. It comes back to us in the form of insights. It comes back into this mundane world as knowledge, as wisdom that we try to formulate with language, that we try to bring into through. That's what the whole process of the Vedas came about. That's the whole process of the suttas. The rishis saw this and tried to encapsulate that in word form. But the tendency of all beings is to always mistake, not always, but generally mistake the finger for what it's pointing at, which is the moon. So in practical terms, this experience of oneness and emptiness is to see the interrelatedness of all experience, that I am dependent upon all other causes and conditions, and I have a place in that oneness, which is the interconnectedness. This is the true essence of even dependent origination.
Thank you. I see we've gone past 2 hours now. There is one more question, which it seems to sort of expand a bit on Quilly's question about piti or bliss from Ines. She says, what is your definition of bliss, please, Forrest and Delson? And how do we know we reach it? Is it a fine state of mind, or is it rather similar to explosive joy? Thank you. I wonder, Forrest, would you jump into that one first, please?
I'd love to. And excuse me. The Kriya Yoga is really practical in this realm, where it says, let's just if we just get to know our spine, which I've defined a little bit further as the dorsal vagal, if we just get to know our parasympathetic system and the dorsal vagal, then we can begin to feel a little bit of that bliss. And that bliss of the body, which is in the dorsal vagal, or we might feel it in the tingling of the skin. We might feel some of that bliss, right? Or maybe we feel it along the spine as a little bit of anticipation or a light excitement. It's just a very, very light tingling along the spine. And this is very body-based, right? And so that's a wonderful beginning of the bliss. Is if I can just get into, so here's a very practical way we can connect to the bliss. I can just get into the HRV resonance, and maybe I feel some of my parasympathetic system. So I feel hands hot and heavy. Maybe my lips tingle. Maybe my skin tingles. Maybe I feel a little bit of that pressure on the dorsal vagal. Well, those are very, very, very finely blissful. And maybe I don't notice that immediately, but if I soak in them, again, if I become the holy potato and I soak in those states, then I can begin to feel just a little bit of that bliss. And that bliss will lead you to the bliss of the heart, which is the bliss of your brain, your deep brain, which is the left amygdala. And that's what the cute baby is showing us immediately. So if I find a picture of let me show you. This is really fun. So this was Ben. Ben, my student, sent me two of these pictures of a seal. I don't know if you can see it. Let me turn up the brightness here. Okay, hold on. This, I promise this is worth it. This is so cute. Look at that. Can you see that seal? I see that seal and my whole heart just explodes, right? Look at that face. Amazing, right? So if you can find a cute baby or a cute seal or a cute llama, somebody called me up. He says, "Can I use my dog? My Chihuahua is so cute. My heart just explodes when I'm like, absolutely, do the cute Chihuahua meditation." So he is Scott. Scott's the master of the cute Chihuahua meditation. And that is a direct connection to your left amygdala. So now we've got a little bit of bliss in the body. We've got the cute baby, a little. And so whatever you feel, when you see the baby and you go, oh, that's it. That is a taste of the bliss of your heart. You're tasting your left amygdala immediately. So you didn't have to wait. You didn't have to wait years. It's right there. And maybe it's this big. And our job is then to get ourselves in that and just slowly soak in it and stretch it and stretch it and stretch it. And pretty soon you can just hold it forever. And that sounds crazy, but a lady called me up. She goes, I just had a baby. And I'm like, congratulations, that's amazing. She's like, I can look at my baby and feel that meditation, that love forever. Now that's supported by the chemicals which are being released for the mother, right? But you can find yourself in that same state where you can just hold these states forever. And when you get into that state, it's quite amazing, right? So it does stretch. It gets bigger and bigger. It gets more and more reliable. But starting with the body, and then as you keep practicing the cute baby or metta, as you keep doing that, Julia is here. Julia, I'm going to out you. And so Julia was like, I'm doing the meditation, and then it hit my heart and it just exploded. And I'm like, that's it. That's it. That's the bliss of the spine coming into the bliss of the heart and just exploding. And so I think that's a very good beginning description of bliss. And you might find yourself in a more and more fine, a refinement of that. It gets more and more fine. And so, if it doesn't explode in your face, and I often say that the yogis, especially, we're looking for God to come slap us across the face with experience. And that's not the case. Very often he comes like a thief in the night. Like Jesus said, he's going to come. Now, funny enough, I was doing a YouTube. I mentioned the thief in the night, and somebody commented. He goes, "Did you know that the huts that they were making, the smoke had to come out of the hut, and so the top of the hut was an open circle, and so the thieves would actually enter through the open circle to come down and rob. So, like a thief in the night means coming down from above. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that beautiful?" I'm like, that just blew my mind, right? So that's what's happening. We're coming up, the grace is coming down, and somewhere along the way you get that experience of bliss. So beautiful question. I love bliss. But it's all in line with the 4 Brahma Viharas. It's all there. It's all your upper nervous system. And we start with the body itself. So the body itself will become a little blissful, and that bliss will lead you to the bliss of your heart.
Thank you. And just as I take it over to Delson, I just needed to note that Gaia has a question. Is holy potatoes referring to being a meditator? Over to you, Delson.
That's so cute. I love that. Go ahead.
What was the question?
Bliss.
Oh, bliss. Yes, that's right. I was just so engrossed with everybody's messages, and then that comment I love that comment. Meditator. That's great. I love that. See, that's bliss. That's bliss. Being able to have fun with things, not taking things so seriously. That's part of the bliss. That's part of the joy, the childlike essence that's in each and every one of us. I'm reminded by, is it Enya? The Child in Us? That's a great song. I love that song. It really kind of portrays the child in us, right? That bliss that we feel And actually, there's a Sanskrit mantra in that song, which is devoted to Krishna. It's Prasanna Vada. So anyway, bliss, I concur with Forrest on that, because it doesn't have to be explosive, although it can be for some people. And some people experience tingling throughout their body. They experience like their heart opening up. They experience like this, like you're on MDMA, you know, you're just completely like you're just overwhelmed with this feeling of joy. And that doesn't have to be the case for everybody. For some people that is, because of the way that their faculties are. For some people, the bliss can be more subtle, more nuanced. It can be an experience of contentment. It can be an experience of relief. You know, it can be an experience of, oh, I can sink into this practice. I can sink into this experience. And that's, and look, I don't mean to compare one or over the other, but here's one way to look at it. The explosive bliss is like a fire that's moving like this, right? But the bliss that's a bit more content, that's a bit more soft, a bit more nuanced, is like a still flame that you see on like an oil lamp, right? And so this one has a tendency to go away completely, and this one has a way to kind of sustain a little bit more. So I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's just that you will notice in your own experience that the explosive bliss is not meant to be long sustained. That would be very uncomfortable. If that explosive bliss came about, you'd be like, make it stop. This is enough. I don't want any more of this, right? But if you have that contentment attached with that bliss, you can keep it much more sustained, and that leads you towards the samadhi. It leads you towards the equanimity and tranquility and these collected states of mind. So don't seek out fireworks. Don't seek out the explosions. Seek out the quietness that's there, because that is what's going to take you to the end.
Great, thank you. Just one, it's also on the same topic. Shadi had said, I get very teary when doing the cute baby. Is this okay? It sounds like a kind of PT. What do you think, Delson?
Yes. Yeah, completely fine. Completely fine. You know, it's interesting when people come on my retreat, there will be one or two people who have tears just naturally coming down, and it's not because they're overwhelmingly emotional. It's just that it's a natural response of the body and mind to feel this bliss, and it's the tears of joy come up, and completely fine, completely cool.
Okay, and anything to add, Forrest?
Oh, absolutely. Perfect. Delson said it perfectly. And the really big bliss, if you really feel that it's actually incapacitating, you'll be stuck in bed. So you wouldn't want that continuously. You really do want that very beautiful, refined. It's like Yogananda used to say that he was like an alcoholic, that he would sneak away for a draft of the divine and then come back. And I think that's a wonderful description of how to approach some of these states that you find inside of your heart and above in the upper nervous system and the brain, that you're going to just lightly pull them into yourself continuously throughout the day, like a drunkard that nobody knows about. And so the meditation, the deep brain becomes your refuge. It becomes your grace continuously. And like Delson was mentioning, that grace and that refuge. And yeah, just absolutely amazing. Love seeing all of you. So glad that you all came, and thank you to Delson, and thank you to John. John, what time is it? It's like 2 a.m. or something.
It's 3:45 for me right now in the morning.
Oh, is that all?
Wow.
Yeah. It's almost time. It's almost time to get up, I think.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you, Forrest, and thank you everyone for coming here. It's always great to see you guys.
Yeah, thank you. So next up will be January 12th, and the topic will be what is awakening, and that'll be the 5th of 7 talks. And so hope everyone has a wonderful holiday, and see you in
Oh,
2025. Promises to be a good one.
yeah, guys. Enjoy your holidays. See you
Thank
around.
you.
Thank you.
It's you
Bye-bye.
Thank
already.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, it was Alexander. Alexander sent me the seals. All right. They're amazingly cute. Love that. Look at that. So cute.
Oh my gosh, I love it. That's great.
Isn't that great?
Great. Keep safe. Thank you.
All right, guys. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.